Resourceful Designer, episode 315, Turning Your Design Style into a Niche.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer Podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now your host, the man with the best voiceover guy doing his intros, Mark Deco. Thanks, my friend. I appreciate that.
No, thank you, Wayne, for recording over 300 of these intros for me. Now, if you listening right now, if you need a voiceover guy for explainer videos or promotion videos, maybe an audio book or even a podcast intro, or anything that requires a great male voice, please reach out to Wayne at mediavoiceovers.com and tell him that Mark sent you. Now, in this episode of Resourceful Designer, I want to talk to you about your unique design style and how you can profit from it. But before I get to that, let me ask you a question. Have you looked at the Resourceful Designer community at resourcefuldesigner.com/community? If so, why haven't you joined? Is there something holding you back? Do you have questions? If so, email me at feedback@resourcefuldesigner.com and I would love to help you because I'm sure the community would be of great benefit to you. And now, turning your design style into a niche. Now, what is your design style? Don't think you have one? Well, you'd be lying to yourself if you said that. Every designer has a design style. Even if your design style looks like that of many other designers, it's still yours. And I bet that there's something uniquely yours in it that makes you different. So whatever your design style is, how did you come by it? Did you go to school for design and develop your style based from what your teachers taught you? Did you learn your style from design influencers? There are tons of great ones out there on social media and all sorts of places that you can follow and learn from. Have you studied the history of design? You know, things like the Industrial Revolution, Art Nouveau, Bauhaus, Art Deco, Postmodernism, and all that stuff. Have any of these periods in design history influenced your style? Did you come by your style from another artistic endeavor? I know graphic and web designers who have fine art degrees. I bet that influences how they think about design. Do you sculpt, make pottery, paint, sew, craft, or express yourself in any other creative outlet? Something that may show up in your design style. Or maybe something else from your life is reflected in the projects that you produce. All of these things can influence your graphic design skills. And since no people are the same, it's understandable that no two designers design the same way. And if you can figure out what makes your design style unique, you can carve out a very nice business based upon it. Now, I got this idea for this podcast episode after Lauren joined the Resourceful Designer community. Now, whenever somebody joins my community, I like to look at their website and portfolio. It helps me to learn where they are in their design journey and how the community can help them. Well, Lauren told us when she joined the community that she has a background as a creative director. So it was no surprise that her portfolio is top-notch. But what I loved most about perusing through her work is how different it is from mine. Reading Lauren's About Me page, I learned that she grew up on the streets of New York City and that she loves punk, emo, and metal music. And I could definitely see that influence in her design style. There's something edgy and wild about her compositions, and I found myself not just admiring them, but studying them, trying to figure out how she did certain things, and trying to imagine her thought process as she worked on each design. You see, her design style is so foreign to me. It's not a direction I would ever take on a project. It's not that it's wrong. Far from it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with her creations. It's just not in my design repertoire to do something similar. Sure, I could probably copy it if I needed to. But even though I consider myself a very good designer, if you gave me a blank canvas, I don't think I could come up with anything in that style without referring to some sort of reference material. Or at least I couldn't come up with anything near as well as Lauren can. Because Lauren's design style is unique to her. And that unique style is something that she could niche into. Now, I've talked about niches before on this podcast, but mostly it's been from the point of the client you target, or maybe the work that you produce, the type of design project. Such as back in episode 174, where we talked about targeting the school branding niche with Craig Burton, where he shared how he's built a very lucrative business designing logos and other branding material for schools in New Zealand and beyond. Or how about some people, such as Ian Paget of Logo Geek, who specializes in designing logos? That's his niche, and he's widely known for it in the UK. I've shared before on this podcast how I know a designer who designed websites exclusively for dentists, and she was killing it in that niche. And I know another designer who only designs rock and metal band t-shirts, and he is in very high demand. These are all niches, or niches if you want to pronounce it that way. And as the saying goes, the riches are in the niches. Because when you niche down, people automatically start viewing you as an expert in your niche, and they're willing to pay more for that expertise. That's exactly what I'm doing with my podcast branding business. I'm specializing in the podcast niche, and people are recognizing me for it. But what if, instead of going after a certain target market or focusing on a certain type of design project like logos or posters or whatever, you instead turn your design style into a niche? Lauren could easily promote herself as a designer specializing in the punk/grunge style design. Now, I don't know if that's the right word for it because I'm not in that space, but you get the idea. Maybe you like futuristic looking design, something very robotic and technical, circuitry and all that stuff. Well, you can embrace that style and promote it. Or what if you have a very illustrative style? Andrew, another member of the resourceful designer community, is a great illustrator, and it's reflected in his portfolio. Krista, yet another member of the community, has a very organic style. Everything she does has that certain outdoorsy feel to it, and she uses that style to target the outdoor sports niche, and she's doing a great job at it. And these days, strong yet feminine styles are in high demand. And although I've created some strong feminine pieces before, I'm probably not the first designer people think of for that design style. What about specializing in country western style design? There's a huge call for that in certain areas. What about Asian styles, African styles, Indian styles? I mean, there's a whole Bollywood movement going on. If you could narrow it down so that's your niche, you may have a very good calling. I mentioned Craig Burton earlier of School Branding Matters. He's based in New Zealand, and the New Zealand culture surrounding him heavily influences his design style. What about retro? There are always people wanting 50s, 60s, 70s style looks. There are so many different design styles that you can niche in. And sure, clients could always ask their regular designer to design something in one of these styles. I mean, I've done country western looks, robotic tech, I've done 60s, 70s, and all of that. Yes, I've even done the strong feminine design before, but none of them are a specialty of mine. And I don't feel natural in these design styles. And when a designer isn't comfortable with a style, they obviously won't produce work as good as somebody who specializes in it. And what if a client doesn't actually have a regular designer that they go to? They're instead looking online for someone. Imagine someone typing country western style graphic designer into Google, or maybe retro vintage designer. If that's your niche, there's a very good chance that you can rank for that term or those keywords and that those clients will find you. And when they realize that you specialize in exactly what they're looking for, they have no more reason to continue their search. What I'm saying is, if you can figure out your unique style and it's something you want to lean into, you could start making yourself a specialist in that design style. It's another way of niching. Speaking of which, what if you were to combine some of my previously discussed niche ideas with this one of niching with your design style? Imagine setting yourself up as a logo designer specializing in retro style logos, or maybe a web designer who specializes in punk or grunge style websites. What about a poster designer who specializes in a country western look? If you can corner a particular niche, you can find yourself in high demand and can charge prices that reflect your specialty. Because by segmenting yourself, you automatically become an expert in your niche to anyone seeking your skills. Now, you may be saying, but Mark, I don't want to be pigeonholed into one niche. I want to be able to work on many different types of projects. And to that, I say nothing is stopping you from doing that. Do you think if a non-school related client was to approach Craig Burton saying how much they admire his style and want to hire him, he's just going to say, well, thank you very much, but no thank you. You're not a school, so I can't work with you? Of course not. I know Craig, and I've seen him create some amazing non-school related pieces. Just because you target a niche doesn't mean you're stuck doing only that type of work. Look at me. I started podcast branding in 2019 as a second company, kind of a side gig to go after the podcast niche. However, I'm still running my other business, Marksman Design, which isn't niched. There's nothing stopping me from doing both. And even within the podcast branding side of my business, I've done non-podcast related projects. In fact, one of my biggest podcast branding clients, who does happen to be a podcaster, that's how they heard about me, was through the podcast space. But he didn't need anything to do regarding his podcast. Instead, he hired me to design a website for his company that is a completely separate thing. In this case, a client heard of me because of my niche, liked what I did, and trusted me enough to work on something that was non-podcast related. So you can always create a second company to go after a certain niche, or you do what I did and create a second company that's actually a DBA, a doing business as. The way I do it, I run podcast branding as a division of my other official business, Marksman Design. So let's say you do decide to pursue this option of entering a niche, be it a target market niche, a particular design piece niche like logos, posters, or t-shirts, or a niche using your design style. How do you go about attracting clients? Well, it all comes down to basic portfolio 101. You need to showcase the type of work you want to work on. You'll confuse clients if you claim to be, say, in the country western niche, but your portfolio contains high-tech and Art Deco looking pieces. No matter how much you enjoy working on that sort of projects, and no matter how great they turned out, they have no place in your portfolio if that's not the niche you're going after. I mentioned how my work for my biggest podcast branding client has nothing to do with podcasting. That's why you won't find any of it on my website, because it's irrelevant to the clients looking for someone to help with their podcast's visual needs. So if you want to start a niche in the retro logo design space, all your portfolio pieces should be logos with a retro look. Now, the next thing to do if you want to attract clients is to network within your niche. Let people in that niche know who you are and what you do. I go to podcast conferences because that's where my target market is. I talk to people, I hand out business cards, and make sure that everyone knows what podcast branding does. Because the more people in my niche who know what I do, the better my chances of getting clients. On my order form on podcastbranding.co, I ask every client how they heard about podcast branding and of me. And on an order that I received just this week, the client mentioned hearing about me from someone that I've never heard of. That could only happen because of networking. Remember, it's not who you know that will help you grow your business. It's who knows you. And in this case, someone out there, somewhere in the world, knew enough about me to pass my name onto someone who needed my services. So if you ever considered niching, but didn't know what direction to take, you may want to consider looking at your design style. Figure out what makes your designs unique and embrace it. You never know. You may be sitting on the greatest niche idea that people are actively searching for. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Now, you heard me mention several people from the Resourceful Designer community in this episode. And that's because we have such a wide array of members at all different stages of their design career, all sorts of different design styles, but all with a similar goal. Every one of them is in the community because they want to grow their design business. They want to get better. They want to get more clients. They want to be able to charge more. They want to be successful. And the community is helping them do that. And that's not just me saying that. Members are constantly telling me how much they enjoy being part of the community and how much of a benefit it is to their business. And every one of them thinks it's well worth the investment. So if you're looking for an affordable way to grow your business, your design skills, your knowledge, or if you're just looking for people to interact with, to bounce ideas off, to get critiques from, then the Resourceful Designer community is for you. To learn more and to join, visit resourcefuldesigner.com/community. It's well worth the investment. So that's it for this week. I hope it got you thinking about what sort of direction you may want to take your business in. Now, if you have any comments or anything you'd like to share, you can always visit resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 315 and leave a comment for this episode. I will certainly reply, because niching is definitely something you should consider. I'm not saying that every designer should niche, but I do know that every designer that I know that has not regretted the decision. So anyways, that's it for this week. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I always appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me learning about growing a design business. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with all your designer friends. Let them know how what I share can help them as well. So until next time, I am Mark Deco, wishing you all the best with your design business and reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.